Welcome to the Marketing Genius Podcast, a show where we interview the most influential people in real estate to teach you how to generate leads, build a brand, and convert more customers. What is up, everybody? Grant Wise here. Welcome to the Marketing Genius Podcast. Very excited today to be sharing the podcast interview with you guys. We got Mr. Rob Nickell on. He's one of the founders of Rocket Station, which is a virtual assistant company that does a ton of incredible things. And I'm getting a ton of awesome and amazing feedback from some of our clients that are actually using Rocket Station service, which is probably news to Rob. I didn't tell him that before we jumped on here. But I'm excited to kind of bring you guys some value today around virtual assistants and virtual maybe ISAs and those different types of things, and just kind of share Rob's experience. So Rob, man, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Grant. I really appreciate your time, and super cool to hear about the good things that are happening with your clients and our teams. And it's always fun to hear about the success stories, because that's what it's all about, right? So yeah. I appreciate you saying that. That's really fun.
Love it, love it, love it. So who is Rob Nickell, man? How did you, because you haven't always been at Rocket Station, you were actually an agent before. So just like, give us the backstory. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when I was in elementary school. I was lucky enough to have older brothers who were kind of showing me the light, essentially showing me a better path. And they, we had Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My parents bought us the cash flow game to play. And so spent a lot of time when I was way too young to be in real estate, actually thinking about real estate and the idea of passive income. And then I graduated from college, and I was trying to get into real estate a little bit, but my corporate job was really getting in the way. It was, having that W-2 job. And so Grant, pretty quick after graduating college, I quit my job and I jumped into real estate full time. And I started as an agent, as a broker, and started off as a listing agent, a buyer's agent, driving people around. Realized how much that was not what I wanted to be doing pretty quickly. It was, that was a grind. And so I switched over to primarily doing listings, which was okay. And the whole point of operating as an agent at the beginning was just to stimulate some income so that I could invest in flip houses. And I just knew about rehabbing as far as an investor. And so I was rehabbing one house at a time and using my money as an agent to just kind of get that going. And then in 2011, I think it's 2011, I learned about wholesaling. And that concept really kind of changed my whole platform, because I was just only doing the rehabs that had enough net and enough spread. And so I was only doing a couple transactions at any given time, a couple rehabs going anytime. And then wholesaling, learning about that totally just blew my mind. I could turn contracts, I could close deals and make money without having to manage a contractor. It was like the greatest concept ever. The problem, Grant, came pretty quick because I ran out of time. So I could do 3 or 4 transactions in a month wholesaling, but I was taking the calls, running comps, setting all the appointments, showing out, negotiating with the sellers. And then I was my dispositions person as well. I'd build my buyers list and meet the buyers over there and try to negotiate back and forth. And then I was my transaction coordinator. So I'd carry that from contract to close. And I could do about 3 or 4 deals a month, hit my ceiling. And I was lucky enough, really, Grant, I was lucky to have some really strong mentors in my life at that time. And they are the ones that were showing me that there's a better way. I already knew about leveraging other people's money to be able to do rehabs, to be able to grow my real estate business. I didn't really understand the concept of leveraging other people's time to kind of do the same thing to grow the business. So I went and was visiting with some of my mentors, and they were really telling me, hey, dude, you got the same number of hours in the day as Jay-Z. If he can figure it out, you can figure it out. So how does he get it done? He's got a team, right? And so my mentors were showing me that they've got these great teams. And one of them actually was delegating and outsourcing most of his stuff to the Philippines. And that's where I learned about virtual assistants in early 2012. Started leveraging them within my business. First was inside sales, right? Answering every call, because I was doing a lot of direct mail and had great referrals going on with agents and everything, generating leads. But it was a nightmare for me to answer all those calls But Grant, I was scared to death of having somebody else answer those calls because that was the lifeblood of my business, right? It seemed like the most important thing, but I also couldn't get anything else done because while I was meeting with sellers or going on appointments or doing other things, my phone was ringing. So the first thing I did was really go through the grind to figure out how to get somebody on the phones. And then once had efficiently working the leads and I kind of figured that out and realized I could do more by having somebody else answer those phones, I could now close more deals. It was just like, that was kind of like the waterfall for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I just need more people. So I went from inside sales to getting an admin to be able to do a lot of the contract to close stuff because I mean, I can't tell you the number of times, Grant, I'd get a contract, send it to the title company, and it include everything that they need, my corporate docs, my articles of organization, every single thing I need. And the title company responds, can I get your articles of organization? Or can I get your corporate docs? Or can I get these three things? And I'd have to respond, sure. They're reattached. And if you look in the original email, they're there as well. And all that back and forth. They're showing up to meet with sellers and they were either not expecting me or trying to cancel reschedule or move me to another day. It was just terrible. So I got an admin to handle all of those things and I started building systems and processes around it in 2012. So I really started creating a ton of structure around not just building teams but how they operate every day within the different positions. So the inside sales and marketing and running comps and buyers lists and transaction coordination and disposition just became a system that I started giving to other people for free. And then in 2013, we did about 120 times for people, again, for free, just helping them hire teams and grow their business. And my whole thing was, man, if you can do business right, if you can have your business run without compromise and do it the right way, then I was actually building the business that I wanted to have. I had some time, I had some freedom, I had more money. I actually had the business I was looking for. Instead of being a slave to my business, I actually had a business that was running without me in a lot of ways. So I was helping other people do that. And the goal was for them to get their life back, Grant. Like I didn't really care to help people make more money. Too many people were already making more money. Initially, that wasn't the idea. It was like for dads to be able to coach their kids' sports and for moms to be able to show up to their kids' events and parents to be able to be parents. Because when you come home at 5 o'clock, the last thing you need to be doing is answering the phone and dealing with buyers and negotiations and all the things that happen the day to day. People wanted their lives back. So the idea of VAs was really initially about helping people structure themselves so they're in their businesses so that they could get their time back and they could get their lives back and ideally make the same amount of money. Then we figured it out even better where now people can both get their time back, get their lives back, but also do more deals, do more transactions, make more money. So you couple the efficiency with productivity, which gets people the output. And I think that's where Rocket Station really is today. We can truly live on and stand on our mission of enhanced lives through better business.
Man, I love it. There's a lot to unpack there. That's awesome, though. What would you say in that early phase where you started going toward the ISA? Virtual ISA, I'm sure you made a lot of mistakes, or maybe not, but I'm sure it was frightening and there was a lot of uncertainty because you didn't really probably have all the systems or the training. And that's kind of why you were doing some of those things. What were some of the things that, like, if you had it to do over, you'd like, I would do it that way instead of this way?
Yeah, totally. So the first thing I would do, which is what we do with all of our people now, is we make sure we get really structured before we hire somebody. So I was burning through my day like a madman, right? The phone's ringing, I'm just going through my day. And I could tell you how I did everything. I mean, but at the end of the day, I didn't really know what I was doing all day. I was just getting through my day, closing deals and making things happen. And then I tried to hire a team member without having any systems, any processes, any real structure in place. And then my entire life, Grant, just became teaching somebody else what to do and telling them what to do every morning and giving them feedback in a very unstructured way. So my entire day became onboarding and training and trying to get team members up to speed and do their job. In all seriousness, I dreaded going to work at first. At first, I hated it because my entire day just became training and getting team members up to speed. So if I had to do it all over again, I would do it the way we force our client partners to do it now, which is spend time with us on the front end to get your systems and processes in place. And all a system is, in my opinion, is a repeatable process. It's just a structure so that someone can go perform that task. And so with all of our client partners today, I feel like the reason we have such a high success rate is because we spend time with them to go through and build those systems and processes and to structure the maps so that team members know what success looks like. They know what accountability structures are in place. They know what they're supposed to do all day without me having to wake up and tell them what to do each morning. I would have started with those systems and foundations and really put some work into laying that out from the beginning instead of building it all after the fact.
So how do you create a system? Like, how do you create like, I understand theoretically what you're saying, but how do you do it practically, tactically? Give me like step 1, do this, step 2, do this. Like, how do I create a system for my business?
Yeah. So you've got 2 options, right? The first one is you can do it yourself. And the second one is you can get some help from people like us, right? So I really struggle with this part personally, but how you actually create it, there's a couple things that everybody needs, whether you've got team members or not. The first is you need to record yourself whenever you're performing different tasks. So like if you're running comps, you should record that. If you are doing a listing, if you're uploading a property into the MLS, just record it. You know, Macs have QuickTime built in, PCs have their built-in screen recording software. It's super simple to just record how you actually go through the process. CRM management, when you're updating leads, just record that, right? And then you've got amazing training materials simply just from recording that process. It becomes really powerful when we can get written scopes, right? So like all of our client partners understand when they're gonna rehab a house, they have to have a clean scope for the contractors to go work off of, right? The contractors don't guess what color paint to use and what materials are going to be in the floor. You don't guess, you build that from the beforehand. So how do you tangibly do that? You have to actually think about what you're doing in the process. So for example, running comps is an easy one. It's mostly science. There's mostly a checklist process to running comps. And then there's a little bit of an art to it based on where you're. Some parts of the country have basements, some parts of the country don't. Is the basement finished? Is it not? There's things that you have to kind of evaluate when you're running comps, but for the most part, it's the same process every time. So building that comp scope is you either get somebody with us that can pull it out of you, right? Our teams, the workforce management teams, they literally just ask you questions and they have you go through the processes and they actually build those scopes for you. But if you're going to do it yourself, it's pretty simple. You go to wherever, you know, your MLS address is online, you have to have a username and password. So you have to write those down. And then you literally just document step by step, Grant, exactly what you're doing. And you have to include all the assumptions that you make in your head all day. That's the big thing, right? People assume when they're creating training that you know what's in their head, right? Because all your team members, you know how to get through your day. You know what you're doing. But if you're going to train somebody else how to do it, you literally have to write down the website. You literally have to write down the username and password, where you want them to go, what button to click. Just take a screenshot and circle. You know, it's super simple to do those types of things. So you either need to think about that, what you actually do in your processes, and then just write it down in Microsoft Word. And then have the next person who's got to perform those tasks. That should be a living document. They should keep that updated, right? Or you screen capture. This is one, it's such a tedious process, Grant, but it's one of the most important processes that anybody can go through. It really does 2 things for you. It allows you to grow and leverage other people's time because now you have resources to be able to hand people, they can go perform their task. But the other thing it does is it helps you look and understand your business. So most people get through their day, most operators, most companies, it's kind of like people who have kids, when you pick your kids up from school and you ask them, hey, what'd you do today? The answer every time is stuff, school, class, how's your day? Good. What'd you do? I don't know. It's the same thing when you have employees. When you ask them, hey, what'd you do today? You know, there's a bunch of stuff. The phone rang off the hook all day and we talked to a bunch of people and we did stuff. And it's like, no. What are you actually doing? What is the process? How are you actually performing your job every day? So if people will take the time to think about the way they actually perform their jobs in the day-to-day, and that, Grant, can be just literally writing it down all day long. Like you've got your notebook, I've got mine right here, and all day long, I'm literally writing down the task and the jobs I'm doing. we have a calibration session internally so that we don't do, like, it's about utilization. So you've met Greg, you've met some of the other people on my team. They're very high paid employees. I do not want them doing low wage tasks, right? Greg's not setting his own calendar. He's not managing his appointments. He's not doing any follow-up. He's not doing any confirmation whatsoever. He doesn't do any of his own Excel sheet reporting. He's just responsible for the outcome. So we build teams around him so that Greg can do his highest and best use all day long. I pay him too much money to do $10 an hour task, right? So by creating systems and processes and actually thinking about how everything is done throughout the day, you can become more efficient because you can really understand how you're doing. It'll highlight a lot of inefficiencies in your day. And then the second thing, you can then outsource those tasks to somebody else and you can get your time back. So I know that's a long rambling answer. It's a lot of things, but it's really about it, that those systems and processes. If anybody's willing to either work with somebody like us to help structure all that for you or just spend the time to do it yourself, it's really the foundation of your success, in my opinion.
How are you quantifying this for yourself in the early days as you began to implement a lot of these things? You know, I'm really big on metrics and numbers and data. It drives a lot of our business. And one of my favorite things to track is my value per hour. It lets me know how to, you know, really shoot out proposals, how to give estimates on my time, speaking fees, like just all those types of things. Knowing that value per hour, like I said, I don't want to spend $500, $1,000, $2,000 an hour doing something that somebody, you know, making $10 an hour or whatever could do. How did you begin to quantify this for yourself? And when you began to implement using virtual assistants or ISAs, did you see where your value per hour really started to take, you know, these like hockey stick type, you know, growth numbers?
Yeah, it's a great question because you hear all the time people say like, your time is worth $2,000 an hour, right? That's kind of the common refrain that anybody hears at live events and seminars and whatever. We all hear as the business owner or as the person responsible for the company, you should only do $2,000 an hour tasks. And you're sitting there asking me like, well, how do you even know what those tasks are? How do you quantify that? Where do you start, right? And I used to hate listening to the gas bags on stage talk about, you know, their lives in these big, great, it's like, okay, well, how do I ground that for me, right? I'm an operator. How do I actually bring that down? It's, to me, the way I quantified it at first, Grant, was I said, okay, what is my revenue per deal? And on a wholesale fee at the time, it was between 12 and 15K back in the when I very first started. A whole lot easier to wholesale in Dallas and you can make a whole lot more money. And my average rehab profit was about 42K. So then I looked at what the median cost per hour to bring somebody internally was. And in the Dallas market at the time, it was 15 to 20 bucks an hour. You could hire an admin type person. Well, 15 bucks an hour, 168 hours a month in a traditional working month over 12 months, that comes out to be right at 30 grand at 15 bucks an hour. So my first quantifiable metric was, if I bring one person in and it's going to cost me 30 grand over the year, how many deals do I need to do to justify that person? It was 2 wholesale deals or 1 rehab. And it didn't matter what else happened. So if they got 2 more deals in 1 quarter, then the other 3 quarters they paid for themselves already. So it's just benefit from there, right? So it's just getting to that number. Could this person produce to get me 1 more deal or get my personal time back, right? Because if I could make the exact same amount of money, but get more of my time back, which was freedom to me, then that was also worth it. So those were the calculations. So when I got an ISA, how many more deals could I do by just having somebody answer the phone? It was almost double, which is the insane thing. I went from doing 3 transactions a month to 6 to 7 by just having an ISA because they handled all that front end work. It was basically a full-time job.
And they become specialists to that one role. Whereas, you know, typically as entrepreneurs or business owners, we're doing 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many different jobs, but we still only have 40, 60, 80 hours that we're working, right? So if I'm working 40 hours a week and I'm doing 10 jobs, theoretically, I'm giving 4 hours a week to 10 specific roles. Well, it's a natural byproduct of, performance that if somebody's just focused on doing that one thing for 40 hours, the results should be astronomically better. Anytime I've ever hired somebody to replace me from a specific thing that I was doing, they were astronomically better at it than I was. Just on the fact that they were spending 10 times more of their attention doing that one thing. And what I was trying to get to here is that when I would hire them to do that thing, just like you were saying a second ago, you could make the same amount of money, but you got the bulk of that time back. What happened is you went from $100 an hour to $200 an hour because you got that time back. So even though you're making the same amount of money, and this is something that people just don't look at enough, in my opinion, even though you're making the same money, you were working less per hour. So your value per hour doubled or tripled or quadrupled. And I've worked with a ton of clients that, started working with us at $75 an hour. We teach them how to create systems like you're talking about, exactly what you just described. And they go from $75 an hour to $750 an hour in less than 90 days, just because they're now intentional about what's my value per hour worth and how can I increase that metric, instead of, it's not always about how can I increase my revenue, how can I increase how much I'm making per hour? It sounds like that's a huge problem that Rocket Station solves, or that you solve for yourself, and then by turning it into a business or solving it for other people.
Yeah. So when you ask people like what do they value most, like 100% of people will say their relationships, time with family. I'm not, I'm talking about, like something, spirituality, the outside of like that type of thing. It's like what in your day to day, what's most important to you? It's like being a dad or mom, or it's my family, it's my kids. So it's like, okay, what are you really looking for? 100% of people are looking for more freedom, more time to do the things that they want to do with the people that they're looking to do it with, right? And then we turn around and we look at their business, and so many times they just look at other people's time as an expense, and not what they're getting back, not what they're getting back from the leverage, which is what you're talking about, which is time. So it's like we hear all day long, I need to be a better dad. I need to be a better business owner. We need to build better culture. We need to do all these things, and I can do it if I have a little more time to do that. It's like, okay, well, $10 an hour, you can get so much of your time back, and here's how we can show you how to do that. And then they want to start calculating that on the P&L as an expense.
Right.
Like, you can't tell me that time is your most valuable resource. You cannot tell me that you care about that the most, and then stack your day with $10 an hour tasks.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's incongruent.
And I've noticed, like, even within the last week, I've gotten so intentional about my time. I sat down with a mentor like just less than a month ago, and they're like, your inability to truly focus on the things you should be focusing on is going to keep you from getting to where you want to go. And I took that very seriously. And I was like, okay, there are, 50 things on my to-do list. What's the one thing that's going to move the needle forward? Not like what's 5 things, what's 10 things, not what can I justify, like 1, 2, 3, 4. What's the one thing that I need to be the person to do and is going to move the needle forward the most for the most people? It's going to help the most people. It's going to increase the revenue the most. Like, what's that one thing? And what I've noticed is if I write 3 or 4 things that I should do in a daily basis to get them done, I'm not even very good at getting those 3 to 4 things done anymore. Like my brain just is so scatterbrained. If I'm paying attention to more than one thing, I'm just not doing it justice. And so what I'm getting at is I've noticed that on the days where I only give myself that one super impactful thing to do, all my attention, all my energy, all my creativity, all my passion goes into that one thing. And it comes out like this freaking diamond in my business of, whatever that task was, whatever that thing was, that is just, it moved the needle forward greater than anything else. It helped the most people. Whatever that might look like. You guys get my point. And so the more intentional you can be about the things that you do inside of your company, it really will just drastically change the way that things are happening. And what I love about looking at these things is we're not projecting out into the future how much these things will cost, right? What the investment's going to be. We're looking back, or at least we should be looking back, like the last 3 months, 6 months, as to how much it's costing you today. It's not costing you $10 an hour. It's costing you your time times the amount of time you spend doing it. So if you make $750 an hour and you wasted 10 hours this past month doing stuff you shouldn't have been doing. That's $7,500 that you wait. That's how much it costs you. It's not the $10 an hour it's going to cost you in the future. It's the $7,500 you're never going to get back because you weren't disciplined to, really, really being intentional about your time. I love the
Yeah.
message.
So how do people make that tangible? How do they bring that down to the day to day? It's like, well, because one of the things I hear all the time is when people aren't really structured, when you don't have a lot of systems, when you don't have a lot of processes in place, you're not really aware. You haven't done time studies on where all the energy in your company is actually spent. We hear all the time, well, we don't have full-time work for an inside sales, and we only have part-time for disposition. I only have a couple hours a week worth of work for this. And it's like, okay, well, how do you know, first of all? Like, you don't even really know. You're just guessing out of your head, right? So it's like, how hours per week? It depends on the workload, right? And so it's a process to get where you're talking about, where you can focus on one thing. Most people can't just start tomorrow and be like, okay, I'm going to focus on one thing. I'm only going to do one thing. That's the only thing. Ideally, absolutely. We all overestimate what we can get done in a day, right? So if we just focused on one thing, it would be the best thing possible. So how do we get to that point? How do we get to it? It starts with getting structured and getting organized and having systems and processes in place. And yeah, people may wear multiple hats at the beginning. Your inside salesperson may also be doing some disposition stuff and doing some follow-up. And whoever's doing admin may be doing CRM management and also running some calendars and doing some executive assistant stuff and taking minutes and doing lots of these other things like working with title companies and sure, people may wear multiple hats. But as you start to grow, and you start to become more professional, and over time you have more and more systems in place, people can become more specialized, people become more focused, and that's when you start separating yourself from the being inside of your business all day long to being able to actually work on your business, if I can steal from Gerber there, which is kind of what you're talking about, to get to that $7,500 or $10,000 place you're talking about. It's just a process by getting structured today, being disciplined about sticking to that, thinking about where you and your team's time is going all day, and then just it's small improvements every day will get you to the point where you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely, man. I love it. I want to respect your time here, so I'm gonna go ahead and wind this on down. If somebody wanted to learn more about you or learn more about Rocket Station, what's the best way for them to do that?
Couple things, just general information, rocketstation.com. It's should have plenty of information there about what we do. Go check us out. But I would love anybody who's interested in spending a little bit of time, because the number one question we have is, man, I understand outsourcing. I understand the concept of leverage, but I don't really know how that could apply to me. How does that apply to my business? What could a virtual assistant do for me? How could we get more structured? Great. Shoot an email to Brooks, BROOKS, at rocketstation.com. And the development team, they're workforce management experts. They'll happily do some time management studies with you, do some workforce management studies to go through your business and show you where you could become more efficient. We always start with technology because we believe having the right process is the most important thing. So if we can get technology and automation in place for you first, we'll help you do that. And then the second piece is to find places for efficiency and gaps for you to be able to either get more done, like we talked about, productivity equals revenue, or you can get some of your time back, right? Some of the delegation. So if you're curious about how a virtual assistant could help your team, whether you hire us or not, spend a few minutes with our workforce management team, shoot an email to Brooks, BROOKS, at rocketstation.com, and the team will walk you through it. So anybody interested in spending a little bit of time with our team, I highly recommend they do that.
Love it. Love it. You guys, we will make sure that we link that up in the show notes. I highly recommend that you reach out to these guys. I am, what's the right word? I'm probably OCD. I'm just like paranoid about tracking a lot of these metrics and stats. See, I'm always trying to figure out like, how can I fire myself? And it doesn't matter which direction I want my company to go. If I want to become a business owner and just sit back and chill and create content every day and let the business work itself and produce the fruit or live on the fruits of that, or if I ever wanted to, maybe position a company to sell, whatever it looks like, it seems like we're all after more freedom, but our actions don't typically reflect those desires. And I want you to get intentional about, really tracking your time and tracking your value per hour. I actually created a piece of content yesterday about this, how to calculate your value per hour. You've got to understand these things. And I would argue that it's more important to understand how you can increase your value per hour, and less important to understand how you can increase your revenues, because a lot of you are out there trying to reach these crazy goals you probably don't even need to accomplish, because you're going to end up making the same value per hour if you created some leverage in your life and did things smarter. So, and I'd like to see you working a lot smarter, especially given the current state of the real estate economy and just everything that's happening. You really have to be spending your time doing the things that you should be doing and not wasting it on things that you have literally no business doing. I always say, just because you're in business doesn't mean you need to be the one doing business. And so definitely, take that seriously. Reach out to Rocket Station, reach out to Rob. These are great people. Or don't reach out to them, and just take what you've heard in this podcast and apply it. I encourage you to do so, but there was a lot of value dropped here today. You could take what you've listened to and go apply it, and definitely start to move the needle for yourself. So, Robert, man, thank you so much for stopping by the show. It was deeply valuable. I learned a lot, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for having me, Grant. This was great.
Awesome. You guys keep tuning in to the podcast on our website. Rate us on iTunes and Google Play if you feel like we've been valuable for you. We will see you on the next episode. Peace. Thank you for listening to the Marketing Genius podcast. Please make sure you remember to rate us on iTunes and Google Play so we can continue to bring you interviews of some of the most influential people in real estate to help you grow your business.